I looked everywhere, but couldn't find my name card or even an empty seat. Puzzled, I continued to walk around the venue. Suddenly, my eyes met Matthew's parents' eye. Then, in unison, they said something to me that I couldn't believe.
If you don't have a seat, just go home.
It was spoken in a tone as if they were heckling me. As soon as they said that, the people around them started chuckling. That's when it hit me. I know why the people with so much money insisted on having the wedding at a garden restaurant. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the staff, who were also trying to stifle their laughter. Whether they were in on it or had been paid off, I didn't know, but it was incredibly infuriating. I suspected something was off, but I didn't think it would be this bad. I muttered quietly.
Whatever you say just sounds like the whining of a loser. Get out of here, you lowlife. Or do you want to stand and watch? Maybe our Matthew is worth it.
Calling me a loser was uncalled for, but as it turned out, they were the ones who would be wagging their tails like dogs at me later. My name is Emily, and I'm 52 years old. I work as a caregiver. My husband passed away 20 years ago. Since then, I've been living with my daughter, Ashley. Ashley is 24 years old this year, and after turning 20, she moved out and started living on her own. She's not very skilled at household chores, so I was worried, but she manages well, occasionally asking for my help. Ashley works as a nurse. Because I raised her as a single mother and she faced some hardships, she grew up to be quite practical and often said she wanted to have a stable job. At first, Ashley aimed to become a caregiver like me. However, my brother David, who is a doctor, saw Ashley and suggested that she might be more suited to becoming a nurse.
Being a caregiver is an important job, but I think Ashley might be better suited for nursing.
David might have said it casually, but that one comment sparked Ashley's interest in nursing, and the more she looked into it, the more she was drawn to it. After graduating from vocational school, she successfully got a job at the local general hospital. The job seemed tough, but Ashley looked happy, saying the pay was good and the work was rewarding. Being her age, I wondered how her love life was going, but it seemed she didn't have many opportunities to meet anyone because of her job.
I can't really see my patients that way, and doctors just aren't my type.
She had laughed about it just a little while ago, but when Ashley introduced me to her boyfriend later, he turned out to be a doctor.
Nice to meet you. I'm Matthew.
He was 30 years old, 6 years older than Ashley, and apparently his father was also a doctor, with many of his relatives in the medical field too. He came from a family of doctors. It's amazing that everyone in your family is a doctor.
Oh, not really. I mean, I hear that a lot, but it's just normal to me.
Although he said that, he didn't seem to mind the compliment.
Well, Ashley's a nurse, so I think it works out perfectly. And you're a caregiver, right, Emily? It's a bit of a different level, but I don't mind.
When he said this while Ashley had stepped away, I was taken aback. Did Matthew just say what I think he said? I understand that being a doctor is impressive. Having seen my brother David go through exams, training, and continuous learning, I know how demanding the profession is. But that doesn't justify looking down on other jobs. The way he said a nurse was a perfect match for a doctor rubbed me the wrong way. Caregivers have their own sense of pride too. I never thought about different levels of importance between jobs. They said they were dating with marriage in mind. Given their ages, it seemed that Matthew was eager to get married soon. I understood this. From what I observed, Ashley was carefree about the relationship, while Matthew appeared to be the one more smitten. Being loved and marrying that way might bring happiness. However, I couldn't shake the complex feeling that Ashley might just go along with what Matthew wanted. A few weeks later, Matthew proposed to Ashley. She told me with excitement, but I couldn't wholeheartedly celebrate. I'm just hung up on Matthew's values. If Ashley isn't bothered by it, then I shouldn't be either. While I tried to convince myself of this, everything moved quickly, and the day of the family's meeting arrived. Knowing Matthew came from a family of doctors made me nervous. The meeting took place in a private room at a restaurant that Ashley and Matthew had reserved. It was a lovely place, elegant but comfortable. Matthew's parents, Sarah and Robert, were pretty much exactly as I had expected. Their way of speaking and the content of their conversation hinted at a strong sense of pride.
A doctor can't choose their patients, you know. Just the other day, I treated someone with a fracture.
Since I'm not much of a talker, I was relieved they took the lead in the conversation. But I couldn't help but wonder if it was appropriate for a doctor to talk so freely about personal details. I see. Oh, actually, my brother is also.
Oh, yeah, Matthew. Do you remember that surgery with John?
Trying to be polite, I attempted to bring up my brother David, who's also a doctor, but I was quickly interrupted, and they started talking about another patient. Are all doctors like this? Ashley also seemed to be uncomfortable.
Not all doctors are the same, you know, but our family is full of doctors, so you can trust us. We're purebred doctors.
Just as I felt relieved that the patient anecdotes were over, Robert burst into laughter. Purebred, really? Maybe it was meant as a joke, but I couldn't bring myself to laugh. I forced a smile, but it was getting harder to keep it up.
Honestly, I wanted a doctor as a daughter-in-law, but Matthew insisted on Ashley.
Ashley's forced smile was also starting to falter.
Well, she's only 24, and if you think about having kids in the future, she's a great catch. Most female doctors are already older.
That's true. When it comes to having an heir, Ashley might be the perfect choice.
Ashley isn't some tool for producing heirs. Am I really going to let her marry into this family? Ashley's expression looks troubled too, and if this meeting ends like this, I'll only be left with worries. Should I say something? Just as I was thinking that,
Mom, Dad, that's enough. You're making Ashley uncomfortable. Please stop.
Matthew, who had been silent until then, spoke up with a frown.
I was just being honest about what I thought. I even complimented Ashley and said she's more than welcome.
I wasn't criticizing Ashley either.
Matthew frowned and shook his head.
Both of you can be pretty insensitive, so please be careful. I get that you're just being straightforward, but still.
While my worries were completely gone, at least I could tell that Matthew genuinely cared about Ashley. If that's the case, there's no need for me to interfere. Please take care of Ashley. The meal ended on a calm note. While Ashley and Matthew went to settle the bill, I was left alone with Sarah and Robert. Apparently, Ashley and Matthew planned to submit their marriage license at the courthouse the next day. I thought the meeting was over and let my guard down. Then Robert suddenly muttered something to me.
For a lowly single mother, getting her daughter married to someone like us is hitting the jackpot.
I was stunned by his unexpected comment, and Sarah burst into laughter, lightly tapping Robert on the shoulder.
Oh, stop it, you. You'll scare Emily if you're that blunt.
Sorry. Well, based on what I saw today, Emily might be lowly, but at least she knows her place.
Knows my place? This marriage is based on love, not some sort of strategic alliance. There shouldn't be any hierarchy between our families. I was so shocked that I couldn't say anything. Shortly after, Ashley and Matthew returned, and the evening came to an end. Later, Ashley told me that despite everything, Matthew's parents were kind to her. It's clear they don't like the idea of her being from a single parent family. But as long as they're treating Ashley well and she's happy, I decided to keep their comments to myself. The wedding was set to take place at a garden restaurant, as they had wished. Ashley hadn't planned on having a wedding, thinking it was a waste of money. But after being persistently asked by Sarah, Robert, and Matthew, she eventually gave in.
It's more like a family gathering than a wedding. We're not inviting anyone from work or any friends.
Because of that, the only guests on our side were Ashley and me. I wanted to invite David and Ashley's grandparents, but they were told there would be another opportunity for that. On the day of the wedding, I visited the venue feeling nervous. When I spoke to a staff member, they immediately offered to guide me. Following the staff, I arrived at a large door. Thinking that the ceremony was just beyond this door made my heart race. I naturally assumed they would open the door for me, so I waited. But for some reason, the staff member stepped aside and didn't move. Am I supposed to push it open myself? When I asked, the staff member silently nodded, so I pushed the door open and entered. As I stepped inside, the staff fixed the door open behind me. The atmosphere beyond the door felt strange. The decorations, the building, and the sunlight streaming through the windows were all beautiful. However, the tension in the air was so thick that it overpowered everything else. There were about 60 guests in attendance. All 60 pairs of eyes were immediately on me as I walked in. It was terrifying to see that no one was smiling. Hello. I greeted the room, then made my way further inside. I hurriedly looked for my seat, eager to sit down and settle in. But no matter how much I searched, I couldn't find a place card with my name on it, or even an empty seat. Puzzled, I continued to walk around the venue. Suddenly, I made eye contact with Sarah and Robert. Then Robert said something to me that I couldn't believe.
If you don't have a seat, just go home.
It was as if he was heckling me. As soon as he said that, the others around us started chuckling. That's when it clicked for me. Now I know why the people with so much money insisted on having the wedding at a garden restaurant.
You and we live in different worlds.
Robert puffed out his chest and took a sip of the welcome drink on the table. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the staff, who also seemed to be stifling laughter. I briefly wondered if there had been a mistake, but it was clear that the absence of my seat was intentional. Whether these staff members were part of their circle or were bribed, I didn't know, but it was deeply unsettling. The idea that I, the mother of the bride, could be invited to a wedding and then not have a seat was beyond comprehension. I'd sensed that I wasn't truly welcome, but now it was clear I had walked into a hostile environment. I suspected something was off, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. I muttered under my breath. Robert dramatically raised his hands in mock exasperation.
I thought I made your place clear at the last meeting, but apparently you still don't get it.
It was now undeniable that the malice directed at me during that first meeting was intentional. It's Ashley's important day, so I'm not going anywhere.
No matter what you say, it just sounds like the words of a sore loser. Get out of here, or do you want to stand and watch? Maybe our Matthew is worth it.
As Robert laughed loudly, others joined in, either because they were amused or to appease him. They boasted about being a family of doctors, but I wondered how many of them actually were. If I were a patient, I'd never want to be under their care. I'll pass on standing. My back's been hurting lately.
Oh, so even if you try to look young, You can't beat old age, right?
Every time Robert made a snide remark, the people around him laughed. With an audience like this, it's no wonder he's so full of himself. That explains why Matthew is the way he is. With parents like these, I almost feel sorry for him.
You should get that back checked out soon. When you're bedridden in the future, there won't be anyone to take care of you. Ashley is our daughter-in-law now.
Sarah nodded proudly.
That's right. With Ashley, we can rest easy knowing we'll be well taken care of.
I'd never thought of Ashley as a caregiver for them. But to these people, Ashley is just someone to take care of them when they get old. How outdated their thinking is in this day and age. Frustration and anger welled up inside me. With a sigh, I turned to face Sarah and Robert. Thank you for your concern, but don't worry. I'm in good hands with an excellent doctor.
We certainly aren't taking care of you.
It was presumptuous of them to assume they were the excellent doctor I was referring to. I wasn't talking about you. I was referring to my brother, David. The moment I mentioned David's name, the room fell silent.
David?
Yes, he's been treating my back for years. Have you heard of him?
Heard of him? He's overseen several books and is constantly in demand at conferences. I'm pretty sure he's so busy, he doesn't even do general consultations anymore.
As much as they prided themselves on being doctors, it seemed they were at least familiar with David's name. Even their relatives started fidgeting upon hearing it. They seemed unsettled by the realization that I had a long-standing relationship with David. That's correct. He doesn't usually see patients.
Then how? Do you have some kind of special connection?
Perhaps as a fan, Robert stood up, clearly excited. I don't have any special connections. The reason is quite simple. No, David is my brother. In that instant, the atmosphere froze.
Your brother? Wait, you mean you're David's sister?
Yes. After a few seconds of stunned silence, Robert, now subdued, shouted,
Why didn't you tell us something so important?
"You're the ones who didn't give me a chance. During our first meeting, every time I tried to speak, you cut me off with your smug little medical anecdotes. Besides, discussing patient details outside of the home, even in a private room, is completely inappropriate. What happened to patient confidentiality? I didn't think it was necessary to mention it."
Well, whatever. So, we're going to be related to David. This is fantastic news.
Robert's eyes sparkled. He seemed almost breathless with excitement. He was clearly thrilled by the prospect. Indeed, David is well known in their industry. Many prominent figures have close relationships with him. For people like them, who seem to love power and recognition, this must be the best news they could hear.
Robert, we need to get in touch with him as soon as possible, even later today.
Absolutely. Now that's settled, let's get this ceremony started. Hey, you.
Robert called a staff member with a nod of his chin.
Add one more seat, just like the ones at our table.
The staff member, looking a bit confused, began to comply. That's when it happened.
That won't be necessary.
Ashley and Matthew appeared from beyond the open door, walking quickly.
Mom,
Ashley, wait, what? I looked at Ashley, who was holding my hand, and tilted my head in confusion. Ashley, why are you dressed like that? The star of the day, Ashley, wasn't wearing a wedding dress. She was dressed in a simple blouse and pants. It was just her everyday clothes. Meanwhile, Matthew, looking flustered, was dressed in a formal tuxedo. Seeing the expression on Matthew's face, I had a hunch. Could it be? Ashley smiled brightly.
Yes. I've decided to call off the wedding.
As Ashley spoke, the room erupted in whispers, and Sarah and Robert turned pale.
What are you saying, Ashley?
That's right. You can't just call it off.
Flustered, they hurried over to us. Sarah tried to place a hand on Ashley's shoulder, but Ashley quickly pulled away.
Don't touch me.
Ashley,
Ashley's cold tone left them both at a loss for words.
Why are you saying you want to cancel the wedding? What happened?
Robert then turned his frustration toward Matthew. Matthew looked around nervously, but didn't respond. Instead, Ashley, the one making the decision, faced Robert directly, her hand still firmly holding mine.
Marriage isn't just about the couple, it's about the connection between families. That's what you told me before, right, Robert?
Yes.
Despite his earlier arrogance towards me, he seemed unable to stand up to Ashley. He nodded weakly. Ashley glared at him and then shouted clearly.
I don't want any connection with your family.
Ashley's grip on my hand tightened.
Did you know? I watched everything that happened here on a monitor from the dressing room.
Sarah and Robert's faces fell with guilt. So that's it? Ashley saw everything, me wandering around looking for my seat, and them mocking me.
I saw that you were having trouble, Mom. I'm sorry I couldn't get here sooner. I was in my dress and had to change.
I'm fine. When I smiled and shook my head, Ashley smiled back at me.
I'm sure they made you feel uncomfortable during the meeting too, didn't they? I'm sorry about that.
No, it's my fault. I should have talked with you, Ashley, as soon as I felt something was off. I had held back because she seemed so happy. I didn't want to burden her with worries or see her sad. But if I truly wished for her happiness, I should have brought it up, even if it was difficult.
Let's go, Mom.
As Ashley took my hand and started to leave, Robert stepped in front of us, arms outstretched.
Wait a minute. This is incredibly selfish of you. Leaving in the middle of this? That's not something a decent person would do.
exactly. And besides, we've already filed the marriage papers, so Ashley is officially part of our family now.
That's right. Once those papers are filed, Ashley is our daughter.
As they yelled, Ashley didn't respond, but glanced over at Matthew. Their eyes met briefly before Matthew quickly looked away, staring at the ground.
Matthew, you haven't told your own parents yet?
What?
Matthew's eyes widened in shock, clearly rattled.
We haven't filed the marriage papers yet.
Even I was surprised by this. I had assumed they had already submitted them, especially after hearing they were going to the courthouse the day after the meeting.
Why not? I told you to submit them immediately.
Yeah, Matthew, why?
Well, I just.
They started berating Matthew. It was no surprise. They had just been so eager to claim Ashley as their daughter, but now it turned out she wasn't legally tied to them at all. For some reason, Matthew hesitated and didn't answer.
It's probably hard for him to say, so I'll do it. I found out Matthew has been cheating.
Ashley said casually, but the impact was huge. Sarah and Robert immediately lunged at Matthew.
Cheating? What are you talking about, Matthew? With who?
It's one of the nurses at Robert's hospital.
Ashley began to explain calmly. The affair came to light the day after their family meeting. As Ashley and Matthew were heading to the courthouse after staying at a hotel, a woman suddenly approached them from behind. It turned out she was the one Matthew cheated with. She had heard that Matthew was going to file the marriage papers that day and had been staking out the area around the courthouse. At first, Matthew denied everything, but then rumors of her being pregnant surfaced. He eventually gave in and confessed everything.
In the end, it turned out she wasn't pregnant, and the affair was just a one-time thing when he was drunk. Matthew seemed genuinely remorseful, so I decided to let it go this time.
However, they decided to postpone submitting the marriage papers until after the wedding. Sarah and Robert's faces twisted with frustration. They had likely thought that once the papers were filed, Ashley would have no choice but to stay.
So, as things stand, we're still single.
Ashley said with a bright smile. Even they were left speechless after hearing about Matthew's infidelity.
Even though I decided to forgive Matthew, I still had some doubts. Then, when I saw Robert and the rest of you looking down on my mother, I made up my mind. I can't be part of your family.
As Ashley said this, she glanced around the room, and the relatives looked away awkwardly. After giving a polite farewell, Ashley took hold of my arm.
Let's go, Mom. I need to tell David I won't be marrying a doctor after all.
Yes, let's. As we began to leave, Robert's voice rang out as he started berating Matthew.
You idiot! This was such a good match, and you ruined it.
Robert's face was flushed red. It was clear that by good match, he was referring more to David than to Ashley.
We were so close to being connected to him.
Why are you accusing me? I really wanted to marry Ashley too. Do you know how hard I worked to win her over?
Matthew started to cry.
I don't care. It's your fault for messing it up. Cheating of all things.
Oh, really? If we're going there, then what about you, Dad? We saw everything on the monitor in the dressing room. You were sneaking around, hugging Mary when Mom went to the bathroom.
What? What did you say?
Sarah glared furiously at the woman in question. The woman Sarah was glaring at was Mary. From there, all hell broke loose. Sarah and Mary ended up in a full-blown fight, pulling each other's hair. Well, we'll be going now, I said as Ashley and I left, but it was clear they had far bigger issues to deal with. A few days later, Ashley reached out to Matthew about the cancellation fees for the wedding. Even though it was supposed to be a wedding, it was really just an event for their family. Given that Matthew had cheated and all the guests were from their side, I thought it wasn't necessary for us to pay. But Ashley wanted to settle things properly and not owe them anything, so I agreed with her. In the end, they took care of all the cancellation fees. Despite the chaos that unfolded, it turns out they stayed and ate the meal afterward. So Ashley was told she didn't have to pay. However, Matthew tried to get back together with her, but she firmly declined.
I thought he was kind, but that was just because I was still new to him. That type of guy will probably become arrogant in the future.
Seeing Ashley analyze the situation so calmly, even so soon after the breakup, gave me some relief. After all that had happened, I was worried she might develop a fear of marriage, but that didn't seem to be the case. A few months later, Ashley told me she had met someone new. When I asked what he was like, she said he reminded her of me. I asked her again if she was sure it wasn't strange to be with someone who resembled her mother, but she insisted he did. We're planning to have dinner together soon, the three of us. Surprisingly, he's going to cook for us.
For some reason, his cooking tastes a lot like yours, Mom.
When Ashley said that with a smile, I couldn't help but feel excited. This time, I truly hope that Ashley has found someone she can be happy with.